Okay, so you want to own a gas station. Buy a corner on a busy road, put up a canopy and 8 pumps, sell gasoline for a few cents more than you paid for it, and collect from every car that pulls in. 1,000 cars a day. Everybody needs fuel. Nobody stops driving because the economy got bad. It's the last real cash business, and the product sells itself. A broker will hand you a site with a traffic count of 24,000 vehicles a day and tell you all you have to do is capture 4% of them. Here's what the broker's package doesn't show you. The owner of that station makes almost nothing on gasoline. He moves $300,000 of fuel through those pumps in a month and keeps less from all of it than he keeps from coffee. And the number lit up in 3-foot digits on the pole, the number the whole business appears to be about, is the one number he doesn't set, doesn't control, and doesn't get to keep. Let's start with what you think you're buying. A gas station is not one asset, it's 3, and in a huge share of American deals, they belong to 3 different parties. There's the dirt and the building. There's the fuel system, which means the tanks buried under your parking lot, the product lines running from them, the dispensers, and the canopy. And there's the business, the inventory, the licenses, the staff, and the right to operate the site under somebody's brand. You can buy all 3. In most of the country, a decent site with a store, 4 to 8 fueling positions, and real traffic runs between $1.5 and $4 million. And a signalized corner in a growing metro runs more. Or you can buy just the business and lease the real estate, which costs a few $100,000 plus inventory. That second version sounds like the smart capital-light play. It isn't. It makes you a tenant on land whose value you spend the next decade personally creating, on a lease that gets repriced the moment you've proved what the corner can do. Take the fee-simple version because it's the one most first-time buyers chase. Say the site is $2.2 million. Gas stations are one of the most heavily financed small business categories in America, mostly through SBA loans, and you're putting 15% down. That's $330,000 in cash. You borrow the remaining $1.87 million, and at rates a small operator actually gets, on a 25-year amortization, the payment is about $15,700 a month. Call it $188,000 a year. But the down payment isn't the cash you need. You have to fill the tanks before you sell a drop. And 30,000 gallons of product in the ground is $90,000 sitting under your feet earning nothing. You have to stock the store, another $60,000 to $80,000, most of which will still be on the shelf a month from now. Then the environmental assessment, the supply agreement fee, licenses, a point of sale system, and 90 days of working capital. So before a single car pulls in, you're roughly $500,000 out of pocket, and you've promised a bank $188,000 a year for the next 25 years. Now the part nobody talks about at the closing table, because it's 40 feet from the closing table and 8 feet underground. Underneath the pavement you just bought are 3 or 4 steel or fiberglass tanks, usually 10 to 20,000 gallons each, connected to your dispensers by product lines and sitting inside monitoring wells and containment sumps. That system is not furniture. It's regulated industrial infrastructure, and the federal government treats you as its operator from the day you sign. Tank systems have a working life. 30 years is the number people use, and lenders use it too. A 28-year-old tank system doesn't fail an inspection, but it does fail an underwriter, and it shows up in the financing terms you're offered. Replacing one is not a repair. You excavate the entire forecourt, pull and dispose of the old tanks as regulated waste, set new double-walled tanks, run new lines, mount new dispensers, and pour new concrete over all of it. That's $400,000 to $800,000, depending on your state and how much contaminated soil comes up with the old steel. And it closes you for 3 to 6 weeks. Fuel revenue goes to zero. Inside revenue goes to almost nothing because there's an excavator where the driveway was. And your $188,000 a year of debt service does not pause while you dig. This is why every gas station transaction in the country runs through an environmental assessment. A Phase 1 is a records and site review for a few $1,000s. If it flags anything, and on an older station it usually does, you go to a Phase 2, where they drill soil borings and pull groundwater samples, and that's 10 to 50,000. Here's the part that matters more than the cost. Contamination attaches to the property. It doesn't stay with the person who caused it. If a leak in 1994 sent product into the soil and it's still there, you're buying that plume along with the parking lot. Most states run a trust fund for exactly this, financed by a fee on every gallon sold, which reimburses cleanup above a deductible. That sounds like a safety net until you read the terms. Deductibles run $10,000 to $100,000. Coverage caps out, and reimbursement means you pay first and wait, sometimes behind a claims backlog measured in years. On top of that, federal rules require you to carry $1 million per occurrence in financial responsibility just to keep the tanks in the ground legally, which creates a category of American real estate most people don't know exists: sites worth less than zero. A closed station with a bad Phase 2 isn't cheap. It's unsellable because the cheapest thing anyone can do with it is nothing at all, forever, while still paying the property tax. Then there's the compliance calendar, which never stops. Monthly walkthrough inspections, annual testing of the leak detectors and the lines, spill buckets and containment sumps tested every 3 years, certified operator training at 3 separate levels, and somebody on your payroll has to hold each one. Weights and measures inspections on every dispenser, because the state verifies that a gallon is a gallon. Each one is a bill, and each one is a chance to be fined. You are not maintaining a store. You're operating a permitted industrial site that happens to sell coffee. Now let's do the gasoline, because this is where almost every buyer's model quietly falls apart. You sell regular at $3.29. It came off the truck at $2.99 delivered. That's 30 cents a gallon of gross margin. A fine, healthy 9%. And it's the number in the broker's spreadsheet. Watch what happens to it. A customer pulls up and buys 15 gallons. That's a $49 transaction, and virtually all of it goes through on a card. Interchange runs a bit over 2%, plus a fixed piece per swipe, so the card networks take about $1.20. Spread across 15 gallons, that's 8 cents a gallon, gone before you've paid for anything else. Card fees are not a rounding error here. Across American convenience retail, they run into the tens of billions of dollars a year, and for most fuel retailers, they're the second largest operating expense in the business, behind payroll and ahead of rent. Now take out the rest. Freight on the delivery, electricity to run the dispensers and light the canopy, which burns 24 hours a day, dispenser maintenance and calibration, hoses and nozzles, forecourt labor, drive-offs, chargebacks. By the time the gallon has actually been sold and paid for, your 30 cents is closer to 12. Say the site does 130,000 gallons a month, a solid volume for a single store. 12 cents times 130,000 is $15,600 a month, $187,000 a year. Your debt service is $188,000. Read that again. You moved 1.5 million gallons of gasoline, you ran $5 million of fuel through the register, and every dollar of it went to the bank. Not to labor, not to electricity, not to you. The entire fuel operation, the pumps, the canopy, the tanks, the tanker deliveries at 4 in the morning, the whole visible business the sign advertises, exists to make the mortgage payment. Revenue is a spectacularly misleading number in this industry. A gas station owner can tell you at a dinner party that he does $5 million a year and be technically honest and functionally broke. And there's a mechanism inside that fuel margin that runs the exact opposite of the way everyone assumes. Your margin is denominated in cents. Your card fee is denominated in percent. When gasoline goes from $3.29 to $4.29, your gross is still 30 cents, because your supplier raised your cost by the same dollar he raised your price. But the card fee on that 15-gallon fill just went from 8 cents a gallon to 10.5. You sold the identical gallon to the identical customer, and you lost 2.5 cents on it. Meanwhile, drivers respond to a $4 sign by buying less, so volume drops in the same month. The per-gallon math got worse. High gas prices do not make gas stations rich. They make gas stations poorer, thinner, and much harder to finance. Here's where it gets genuinely strange, because you don't set your cost either. If you run a branded station, you signed a supply agreement, usually 10 to 15 years, and you buy at what the industry calls dealer tank wagon pricing. That's a delivered price set by your supplier, not a market you shop. And suppliers price by zone. The same brand, out of the same terminal, on the same day, charges different dealers different amounts based on the competitive character of their micro-market. You can pay 5 or 6 cents a gallon more than a station 4 miles away for fuel that came off the same rack, because a pricing analyst decided your intersection can absorb it. Meanwhile, your ceiling is set by the guy across the intersection. Retail gasoline is the most price-transparent product in the American economy, displayed in numbers a foot tall, visible from a quarter mile, updated live, and posted on every phone in every car. If he goes to 326, you go to 326, or you watch your volume walk. So you buy at a price you don't negotiate and sell at a price you don't choose. Your entire commercial freedom is the gap between two numbers set by other people. There's one window where that gap opens. Retail prices climb fast when wholesale climbs, and drift down slowly when wholesale falls. And in that lag, when the market is collapsing and your cost drops 8 cents a week while your street price drops 2, your margin doubles. Your best quarters are the quarters when oil is falling apart. The news calls that bad for the energy business. For you, it's the only time the pumps make real money. And the sign on the pole isn't yours, it's rented, and the rent gets paid in obligations. A brand agreement dictates your canopy, your dispensers, your signage, your restroom standard, and a refresh cycle you pay for on a schedule they set, plus minimum purchase volumes. Getting out means stripping every piece of imagery on the site and repainting all of it, $75,000 to $150,000, after which a slice of your customers stop coming, because a portion of American drivers will only buy gasoline with a specific logo on it. This is where the first trap opens, and it takes down operators who are perfectly profitable. Fuel is paid for by electronic transfer, often within a week to 10 days of delivery, and most single-store operators buy it on a credit line. That line is denominated in dollars. Say the line is $150,000. At $2.80 a gallon wholesale, it buys about 53,000 gallons of purchasing power. Now wholesale spikes to $3.60. The same line buys 41,000 gallons. You did nothing wrong, your customers didn't leave, but you're 12,000 gallons a month short of what your own store sells, and your cash is trapped in products sitting in the ground that you can't move any faster than cars arrive. At the same time, your card settlements land a day or 3 behind, and your inside vendors want paying on net 15. You run out of dollars in exactly the week your product became more valuable. Stations that die in a price spike do not die because they were unprofitable. They die because they were profitable in gallons and insolvent in dollars. The forecourt has one more way to bill you without warning. When the card networks pushed chip liability out to fuel dispensers, every station that hadn't replaced its pumps became financially responsible for fraud at its own pumps, and card thieves are very good at finding those stations. Upgrading runs $10,000 to $25,000 per dispenser, and on older sites, the conduit under the concrete won't carry the new hardware, so the job becomes another excavation. 8 dispensers is a 6-figure capital event that generates 0 additional gallons. Now here's the other side of the ledger, and it's the side that keeps the lights on. Fuel is roughly 2/3 of your revenue and about 1/3 of your gross profit. The store is about 1/3 of your revenue and roughly 2/3 of your gross profit. Every serious operator knows this, and almost no customer does. Start with the biggest category inside the building. Cigarettes are, in most stores, the single largest line on the inside sales report, often close to 1/3 of everything you ring up. They're also one of the worst products you carry. Margin sits in the low to mid-teens because the tax is most of the price and the tax isn't yours. Volume declines every year and has for 2 decades. And the inventory is expensive, compact, and the most stolen thing on your property, which is also why you're the kind of business that gets robbed at 2 in the morning. Your largest inside category is low margin, permanently shrinking, and the reason you need a camera system. Now look at what actually pays you. A large coffee sells for $2.19. The coffee, the cup, the lid, the creamer, the sugar, and the labor to brew it total about 35 cents. You keep $1.84. Go back to the pumps. 15 gallons at 12 cents net is $1.80. 1 cup of coffee equals 1 full tank of gasoline. Everything inside that building runs on that arithmetic. A fountain drink costs $1.25 and sells for $2. Prepared food carries 50 to 60% margins, though it brings a kitchen, a health permit, dedicated labor, and waste, because the roller grill that cost you 45 cents a hot dog throws away a real share of what it cooks every night. Lottery is the great illusion of the category. A store can push $30,000 a month in lottery sales and earn a commission of 5 or 6%, which is $1,700. That's the whole return, in exchange for the machine, the cash exposure, and a line of people standing between the door and the register who buy nothing else while they stand there. Then the cost of keeping the door open, which is relentless because the door never closes. 24-hour operation is 8,760 hours a year of coverage. One person behind that counter at all times requires 4.5 full-time employees once you account for weekends, vacation, and sick days. At $15 an hour, loaded with payroll taxes and workers' comp, that's roughly $150,000 a year to have exactly one human being present. Add a second person for the day shift and the morning rush, and you're past $220,000. Convenience retail turns over its staff at a rate north of 100% a year, so a real share of that budget trains people who won't be there in March, while your till shortages track your newest hires precisely. Utilities run $4,000 to $6,000 a month because the coolers, freezers, canopy lights, and forecourt never shut off. Then property tax, insurance, including a separate environmental policy, alarm monitoring, trash, point-of-sale licensing, bank fees, supplies, repairs. Put it together, fuel contributes about $187,000 a year. A store doing $95,000 a month of inside sales at a blended third margin contributes about $375,000. That's $560,000 of gross profit. Operating expenses take $380. Debt service takes $188. You are, roughly, at zero. That's not an exaggeration for effect. That's the honest math on a normal American gas station in a normal year, and it's why the industry is full of families working 90-hour weeks. The owner's return isn't in the till. It's in the two things the income statement never shows: the wage he'd otherwise pay a manager, and the fact that every one of those mortgage payments is quietly buying back a piece of a corner lot. Which brings up the strangest structural fact in the whole business. Only about 1/3 of the people who buy your gasoline ever come inside. The other 2/3 tap a card at the pump, fill up, and drive away, having handed you $1.80. You paid $2.2 million for a corner, so a car could sit on it for 4 minutes and give you the price of a candy bar. And those same drivers will cross 4 lanes of traffic to save 3 cents a gallon, which on a 15-gallon fill is 45 cents, and then walk inside and pay $2.49 for a bottle of water that cost you $60. That's the business in one sentence. The giant illuminated sign is an advertisement for the product you make nothing on, paid for entirely by the product you do. Pay at the pump is what broke it. It was invented as a convenience, and it deleted the one moment the whole model depended on, which was a person walking through your door to settle up. Every visible innovation since is an attempt to rebuild a reason to open the car door. The coffee program, the made-to-order food, the famously clean restrooms, the loyalty app that discounts fuel you barely profit from in order to capture a purchase you profit from enormously. The extreme version is Buc-ee's, which built an empire on bathrooms so notorious that people plan road trips around them, sells brisket to travelers who weren't hungry, and deliberately refuses 18-wheelers because a truck takes enormous space and buys almost nothing but diesel. So far the corner sounds difficult but survivable. Here's how it actually dies, and it's almost never the competitor across the street. The first way is a hypermarket. A warehouse club or a grocery chain opens a fuel center a mile and a half away and prices at or below what you pay your supplier. They can do that because fuel isn't their business. It's a customer acquisition tool for a membership renewal or a $140 grocery basket. You lose 20 to 30% of your gallons in a quarter, and no strategy is available to you because you cannot outprice an operation that doesn't need the product to be profitable. The second way is the road, and nobody underwrites it. A transportation department installs a raised median down your street and your left turn disappears. Or it rebuilds the intersection for 11 months and your entrance becomes a gravel obstacle course. Or it moves the interchange half a mile north. Your traffic count is unchanged. 24,000 cars still pass you every day. They just can't get in anymore. And in most states, you're owed nothing for it. Because as long as some reasonable access to your property remains, changing the flow of a public road isn't a taking. It's traffic management. The third way is buried under the concrete. The tank system reaches its age, or a compliance deadline lands, or a monitoring well shows product where product should not be. Now you need $400,000 to $800,000 of capital on a business that clears essentially nothing, secured by a property whose value is in question because of the exact problem you're trying to fix. Underneath all of it is the slow drain. The largest category in your store shrinks every year as smoking declines. Electric vehicles won't empty your forecourt this decade, but they already show up where it hurts a small operator first, in the terminal value. A lender writing a 25-year note today is thinking about what a gallon-dependent corner is worth in the 2040s, and that thought comes back to you as a shorter amortization and a bigger down payment. So where's the actual money in this industry? Because it exists, and it's enormous. It was never the gallons, it's the dirt and its density. When 7-Eleven bought Speedway, it paid $21 billion for roughly 3,900 stores. That's about $5.5 million a store, a valuation no individual buyer could rationally justify. They could justify it because the identical store is worth more inside a network. At their scale, fuel gets bought closer to the rack. Card interchange gets negotiated instead of accepted. Private label carries margins in the 40s instead of the 20s. Distribution runs on their own trucks. The same corner, doing the same volume, generates more profit under a different owner, which is the definition of an industry that consolidates. That's why Casey's built pizza kitchens across small-town America. It's why Wawa and Sheetz are, structurally, restaurant companies that happen to own fuel islands. The fuel gets people into the parking lot. The kitchen pays for the building. There's also the exit that looks like a windfall and works like a mortgage. Sell your land to a net lease investor at a 6% capitalization rate, and you'll collect $2.5 million in cash, then pay $150,000 a year in rent, forever, on ground you used to own. Operators do it to fund a second and third location, and it works when the second store works. When it doesn't, you've converted the only asset that was quietly building your net worth into a permanent expense line. That's the real split. A single store sells for a modest multiple of its earnings because the buyer is honestly appraising a job. A group of 20 sells for double that multiple because the buyer is appraising an enterprise with a management layer, purchasing power, and a real estate portfolio. The same store, doing identical numbers, is worth roughly twice as much the day it becomes part of something bigger. There are about 150,000 convenience stores in America, and somewhere near 60% of them are owned by people who own exactly one. Those owners are not losing on the forecourt. They price sharply, they work harder than the chains, they know their customers by name and by fuel grade. What they lose is the bidding, because when a good corner comes up, they're bidding one store's cash flow against a company that will earn more from that identical location on day one. The ones who win do it in an unglamorous way. They buy the dirt, not just the business. They take a site nobody wants because of the tanks and price the remediation into the offer instead of walking away. They treat fuel as the cost of generating footsteps and run the store like a restaurant. They spend a decade making the mortgage payment out of gasoline and building equity in a corner, and somewhere around year 8, they buy a second one. And that's the year the arithmetic finally changes. So the next time you pull in, watch what everyone in that transaction is actually looking at. Every driver in America judges this entire business by one number, lit in 3-foot digits and read at 45 miles an hour. They'll cross 4 lanes of traffic over 3 cents of it, and they'll never think about it again. You'll be standing behind the glass watching them make that turn, and you won't be thinking about the number at all. You'll be thinking about 30-year-old steel buried 40 feet from where they parked, and a median the county is drawing on a map 9 miles away, and one thing only. The price on the sign was never the business. The car door was.